All right. Hi, everyone. You are in track 1 today, and we have a great presentation for you. So here with me today, I'll introduce Taylor Spaeth, a Senior Manager of Insights and Analytics at Kellanova. So Taylor is a Senior Manager, like I said, of Insights and Analytics at Kellanova, bringing over 15 years of experience across CPG and agency roles. She has led consumer insights at Kraft Heinz and held strategic planning positions at agencies including ARC Worldwide, Leo Burnett, and Geometry Global. With Taylor is Liam Hickey, the head of research at KNIT. And Liam has worked in insights and consulting for more than 20 years across New Zealand, Australia, and the US. He oversees research agency, product development integration, and project delivery at the AI-powered insights startup. Past roles have included senior leadership positions at Morning Consult and Kantar Insights, building high-performing teams and delivering transformative insight programs across brand, customer experience, and product development. A New Zealand native, now based in Chicago, Liam was trained in psychology and marketing at the University of Otago. Awesome backgrounds, and they are here to present to us about Gen Z said we're mid. Now what? How Kellanova is using researcher-driven AI to reclaim cool. All right, cool. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much for that intro. And when I provided that to my marketing team 3 weeks ago, I had no idea it was going to be read out. I thought it was for print material. So as she said, we're here to talk about how Kellanova is using researcher-driven AI to reclaim cool. And to reintroduce us real quickly, so you've got a face to the name, I'm Liam Hickey, the head of research at KNIT. Taylor, do you want to say a quick couple of words about your role at Kellanova?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Excited to be here today. And I lead our Pringles US Insights and Analytics business at Kellanova.
Awesome. Thanks, Taylor. And for those of you hearing about KNIT for the first time today, we've built the simplest way for the world's best brands like Kellanova, like Amazon, like T-Mobile, and others to go from survey to story in less than a week. And we do this through our philosophy of researcher-driven AI, which combines the AI's ability to simplify and streamline the research process from survey creation to fielding to analysis and reporting with expert researchers who guide and refine the process at every step, giving you that full-service research agency experience, but at the self-service cost, control, and speed. Lastly, KNIT helps you tell the full story of your customers, the what and the why, by combining quant and qual into one data set. You'll see several great examples of that in today's presentation, but to set the stage for our conversation today, Taylor, do you want to say a little bit more about your role at Kellanova, the kinds of initiatives you support, what your team looks like?
Absolutely. So in leading Pringles Insights and Analytics, we are part of the salty snacking portfolio at Kellanova, alongside the likes of Cheez-It and our Townhouse and Club Crackers brands. So the salty snacking category is a very broad-reaching category at about 98% household penetration, right? So almost everybody. So as we look at who we really want to talk to, we look to who are the most frequent consumers in the category, which are actually Gen Z. And Gen Z today is age 13 to 24, or even 28 by some definitions. And that means that they are spanning a wide variety of life stages with wide variety of needs, from being children themselves to also having their own children, right? That's quite a few life stages that you're trying to cover in one single demographic. And more challenging than that is that when we think about our traditional research methods, a lot of them are really focused on age 18 plus data, right? Whether it's panel, whether that's just the the recruitment that you're getting. And when you have 18 plus head of households as your representation in your consumers, Gen Z is often highly underrepresented because the 13 to 18s, the nearly half of them, if not a third, that are left out of that cohort, and the 60% plus of Gen Zs that are over 18 and say they're actually still living at home with their parents. And so that means almost 2/3 of Gen Z is not represented in your research when you're doing traditional research at age with just the 18 plus. And more than that is when you're making those marketing decisions around Gen Z, let's be honest, a lot of our marketers are not Gen Zs. The ones in the room making the decisions, they're not yet the Gen Zs. And so to anticipate the needs and their opinions and perspectives is just not as intuitive to those marketing decision makers when you're not the target.
Awesome. And when you think about that next generation of consumers and the kinds of challenges you're mentioning there, how is NIT helping you with that intersection of researcher-driven AI and video responses in research?
Yeah, for us on this project to really unpack this complex generation, NIT was the right choice in the platform partner for a couple of reasons. One, because Gen Z is a little bit more candid when they're able to do that selfie style video. And so we wanted to get those candid reads on opinions of our brands. Two, for NIT, what their platform does is really takes the art out of the science and qual research, right? It helps mitigate the leaning into certain aspects of qual that you're hearing. And so it really helps you to get to the overall finding fast and go deep, so you can go deep and double click on the insights in the right direction. And then three, for us, what was really important as we explored this generation and understanding that we potentially have to take some action in building our brand equity was being able to compel action with the voice of the consumer, and their platform with video editing and AI output on video really helped us to get to that video to make that compelling voice of the consumer quickly.
Cool, awesome. We often hear that Gen Z is a tough audience to crack, especially in traditional research settings. What was it about that experience on the NIT platform that allowed you to kind of get that unfiltered, unaided response from Gen Z on their own terms?
Yeah, so Gen Z is known as the most anxious generation. And so for us as market researchers, when it comes to live qual, that can actually pose some challenges. One, they try to answer in the way they think the moderator wants to hear, more so than other generations. They're also feeling the social pressure of others in the room with them, and they're more likely to get to that groupthink dynamic. So live qual sessions with multiple tends to gear them towards a groupthink dynamic that you don't necessarily want. But being first digital native generation, it also means that selfie style videos for them are an organic outlet and used as sort of personal diaries for them. And so NIT's platform allows for that selfie style video and enables us to kind of glom deeper insights so that they can share their true unfiltered opinions without that fear of social kind of judgment or thinking that their opinion is one-off and different than others. It really helped us to get that unbiased perception. And when we get that unbiased perception from them, it really helped shed light on the context of things that we were hearing, that we're seeing our brand scores that, yeah, our brand is doing pretty good. We're pretty good. But when we get the context from Gen Z in this unaided, unfiltered way, what it's really saying is, yeah, your brand is mid. And for any of us who are not Gen Zs in the room, like myself, we said, what is that? And that actually means you're not that cool. And that pretty good means is not necessarily a good thing. It's actually that they're a little indifferent, you're not standing out, and you're really not getting that strong resonance and traction with them yet.
Cool. And so when Gen Z does open up, when you give them the space and the format to be honest with you, this is the kind of clarity that you get. So Taylor, this is unaided brand mentions, just taking a step back. We didn't prompt them with anything here. We just said, what feels cool to you right now and why? And if you can see there that on the chart, Takis didn't just edge ahead, they completely dominated the list. So Taylor, what did this tell you about not just the brand landscape, but about how Gen Z are kind of responding to this kind of research?
Yeah, this was a pretty powerful unlock in the study for us, is when you're not telling them a list of brands and telling them to rate it, it's what brands stand out to you. You know, we hear the rumors of Takis kind of tracking with Gen Z. We don't necessarily see it as much in the sales data, but hearing them cite Takis unaided over and over again, driven by themes like the spicy flavors or variety of flavors, really helped to illustrate that there's an opportunity that we're missing with Gen Z here. And so the AI platform helped us summarize the unaided responses to get us to quantified unaided mentions here. But then more tellingly was that this data actually looks dramatically different than our 18+ brand equity tracking. And that is a huge disconnect in our research that really helped us to shed light on we're kind of missing with our most frequent consumer in the category. And let's open up our ears and figure out exactly what the brands that are winning with them are doing.
Cool. So one of the biggest challenges with qualitative research is knowing which signals to trust and which things might just be kind of noise coming through in the data. And this was one of, so Taylor, how did NIT help you and your team separate the one-off insights from the real patterns and ultimately understand what Gen Z meant when they called your brands pretty good?
Yeah, exactly. So, what the platform really helps to do by combining the qual with the quant in the same study is, in looking at the qual, it really helps take that art out of the science. Because insights in general, we know it's an art and a science. And that's why a lot of times when we're talking about, well, the qual says, people put up their fingers and do air quotes, right? But it actually takes out the air quotes when you have a quant sample of qual, so the qual at scale, and analysis that takes out the room for error in analyzing the opinions and what you're hearing the themes are. Because it's very easy to go down a track of one powerful respondent and how they said something, or one theme that was standing out, or one hypothesis that was validated in there. So not only do you get the qual at quant scale, we got the understanding of what the qual was saying without the art or researcher bias embedded in it. So for us, that really took the legwork out of figuring out where to fish for our insights. And then once you have the where to fish, in the platform, you're able to literally double click into, now why are people saying that? What were the verbatims that led to these generative AI conclusions and themes on this?
Now, once you've cleared away the noise and you avoided chasing those one-off quotes, the next question naturally becomes, where do we go deep? And this was one of those moments where the data, I think, really challenged the assumptions you had going in. And so taking a step back here again, we asked these Gen Z folks, among you and your friends, what 3 things are really cool right now and why? So again, completely unstructured and unaided. And so for a lot of us here in the room, Nike probably feels like a pretty obvious answer, maybe even too obvious. But what was the deeper story behind this slide that you uncovered in those unaided responses?
Yeah, so I think looking at this slide, like a lot of people in the room right now, you might be thinking, did you pay for this? Did you pay extra for these responses? That Gen Z likes video games, that Gen Z likes Nike and TikTok and travel exploration. So that was a little bit of my reaction when I first saw what the AI analysis on this unaided question came back with. And but you almost want to say, yeah, I know that. But the reality was you could now double click into why they were saying that, right? And for us, as we look at a brand like Nike, it's like, it's been around forever. It's a legacy brand. And I think the question was, is this just a trend, or is it just the obvious answer? But we could really double click into hear them why they were saying that it was resonating with them. It's because they're consistently showing up true to their purpose. They're consistently showing up in one singular authentic way and always maintaining their pulse on culture. So it wasn't as much about the trendability as much as the consistency and tie to their authentic assets. And that, for us, was a really big opportunity to learn coming from a brand, storied brands with our own authentic assets.
Yeah, and we all know it can be really difficult to make that case for long-term brand investment, especially when the ROI isn't that immediate. So next I want to talk a little bit about how bringing the actual voice of the customer into those conversations, not just insights about them, helped Kellanova break through that internal resistance and start to get some momentum with the conversations. And so let's talk about making that case internally a little bit with using those real consumer voices. So for many brands, I'm sure this is the case out here, it's not a challenge to get the insights about the consumers. It's a challenge to actually have the organization act on those insights and really start to make a change, especially when you're trying to make the case of that long-term brand building investment. Taylor, I know you've faced some of that headwind internally, but what really stood out to me was how you were able to cut through the noise by bringing Gen Z's voice literally into the room. Can you walk us through how you use those video clips to make the case and how it shifted the conversation from we're doing okay as a brand to we actually need to take action?
Yeah, absolutely. So, asking for those brand equity building dollars is a big ask. It's expensive. You don't get the results right away, and a lot of the results have varying degrees of metrics of, are you hitting KPIs? And it's an ask that your CFO is hearing all the time. It's almost a running joke in the boardroom of marketing's asking for brand building dollars, right? So they're hearing it not only from your brand in the organization, but all brands and frequently. So when you go to ask for brand building dollars or make a compelling case to say, our brand is in need of brand building dollars, you have to find a way to break through and really underscore that importance. And so when you're trying to make that case, it really hits different when you have the voice of a Gen Z saying, yeah, your brand's pretty mid, right? That a CFO can't unhear that. And that really changes the game in terms of going into the quantified opportunity of the case that you're trying to make, that you're able to get from this study. Because you can really go into underscoring some of the quotes of, we want your brand to do more of this, or you have new flavors, but that's not enough to be relevant. When the Gen Zs are actually telling on camera what your brand needs to do to break through to them and why they're not breaking through to them today.
Cool, and this is where it really came together for me, the moment where it really became clear that building brand equity will have business impact. So Taylor, you shared this chart with us as one of the turning points, and at first glance, it looks like all of these brands are doing pretty well with Gen Z, they're consuming them with good consistency, and they're all seen as reasonably cool. But what's the deeper story behind this slide?
Yeah, so not only are we able to kind of get that context of what the Gen Zs think of your brand and that firsthand qualitative voice, but in the same study, we're able to get to that quantification of how frequently are they eating the varied brands in the category, daily, several times a week, once a week, or once a month, et cetera. as well as their quantified rating of their coolness perceptions. And when we took a look at what those scores look like, there's a very clear correlation that the higher your brand was scoring on the coolness factor, the more frequently they were being chosen for the eating occasions. And so it can be very difficult to quantify, your brand equity gap, as well as the business opportunity that brand equity will lead to. And so what this shows is that we had a lot of headroom for opportunity if we can really work on amping up the coolness factor to translate into getting chosen in frequency.
Awesome. And I know the audience is here not just to hear about the study and what you did with KNIT, but also maybe to learn a little bit about Gen Z. Can you make us all a little bit cooler by telling us what they think is cool right now?
Yeah, one of the key takeaways from the study overall is that Gen Zs really value uniqueness and authenticity in themselves, but then also in the brands that they choose. And the brands that they're choosing are doing something meaningful. And so they're choosing brands that are really taking a real stance and perspective, whether that's political or action-oriented for good. And they're choosing those brands because they know those brands are taking a risk and they're giving them credit for the risks that they're taking. They're really looking at the brands that are organically embedded in culture. So we had one video where a girl said, "Oh, well, I'm starting to buy Lululemon now," because it was cited in a song, and she was not the Lululemon customer of yesteryear, right? So far from sort of the suburban mom. And so when they can embed themselves organically in culture, that's where they're getting noticed. And then they're no longer just advertisers, right? They don't see themselves as advertisers or even as selling product, so to speak. What they're selling is stories. They're creating stories that people want to follow, that Gen Zs want to follow along with, from brands like Duolingo or Bulldog Ramen. They're creating content that Gen Zs want to see, and the product is almost an afterthought. So those are the brands that are really kind of resonating with Gen Z because they're doing things differently.
Awesome. And Taylor, you've talked about how the research helps surface some tough truths, like being seen as mid by Gen Z. I'd love to hear about how you and your team are actually applying the insights. What does this journey from mid to magnetic actually look like in your brands?
So yeah, I think being high legacy brands, mass reaching brands, what we really need to do is, rather than trying to reinvent ourselves, it's really about leaning into what makes us authentic. We have an opportunity to double down on our authentic assets and continue to make those famous, and making sure we're clear that Gen Z isn't always aware of our authentic assets. They weren't born in the 90s with the Once You Pop, right? So I think it's all new to them, but we have that authenticity that draws them in. If we can, confidently own that and continue to create the awareness on those. Another opportunity I would say is that, setting yourself up to respond at the speed of culture. And that's just an organizational function challenge that you have to overcome. You need to get your agency partners, your brand partners, and to be set up to have flexibility and respond and embed yourself in culture. And we saw that with examples like the Taylor Swift album drop, right? And some of our brands were able to jump on that. And then I would say the other opportunity that's gonna feel very uncomfortable for your mass audience brand is leaning into niche culture, right? That we're seeing more disparity in what consumers are looking for, especially Gen Zs, that there was no song of summer in this last summer, and that was the headline, because everyone is listening to something different. And so if you can't just fight it and try to create something mainstream. You have to embrace the niche trends and become a trendsetter rather than a follower, which for mass brands feels very uncomfortable and will take you, but will have an opportunity to take you to new places and really better resonate with Gen Z.
Cool, and if you ask the Gen Alpha in my household, the song of summer was definitely Pink Pony Club. So before we wrap...
That's so last summer, Liam.
Before we wrap today, let's zoom out for a second. For the Insights pros in the room, there's more to learn here than just, what Gen Z thinks about salty snacks. I really want to emphasize, first of all, that AI didn't replace the researcher in this situation. We actually elevated them. Taylor's team still did all the storytelling. It's just that the platform was able to surface the truth for them faster and to clear out the noise for them. Second, there's something really powerful about shifting the messenger. So we're used to delivering insights about consumers, but when stakeholders actually hear it from them directly in their own voice, that's where we actually see a real momentum shift in that decision-making moment. And finally, you can't move forward as a brand if you're not crystal clear about where you stand today. And I know that this project really surfaced some pretty brutal truths about how Gen Z saw your brands, but it was this combo of unaided qual with the structured AI that made it possible to tell that story and really bring it to the organization's attention. Anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I think just for me, it wasn't about letting the AI take over. It was really about, as a insights leader, it's let the AI do the heavy lifting to give you space to do the thinking and understand what does it mean and what should we be doing as a result. Because a lot of times what we don't want to be doing is get caught up in having to run all the, create the data tables to understand, all right, where all the data points fall. It's let AI do all of that, do that analysis so that you spend your time really being that action-oriented leader that I know we've kind of heard about in some of the other sessions throughout today as well.
Cool, and I'll just quickly close this out with when you can kind of think of knit in your own research journeys. So our platform, our research techniques, and our expert researchers really come to the fore anytime qual and quant meet in those research journeys. So where the what and the why kind of need to come together into one place. So if you see a use case on screen or not that you're thinking of that might be relevant or applicable, come and talk to me afterwards, talk to Taylor, or come visit us at our booth, which is up near the main entrance, and we'd love to have a chat. And then lastly, because we're often able to combine those research steps together, the qual and the quant, the what and the why, we are able to really give you great ROI on your research budget. And because we're not trying to replace researchers, we're really trying to elevate them and make them the hero. We can offer you that professional ROI as well, really elevate your role and bring you to the fore in the process and make you a better researcher. So thank you so much for coming today. We'll take any questions for the room. I think we've got a couple of minutes left, so we're right on time. Any questions?
My question was how you got the Gen Zers. Is that from like a panel that KNIT has? Is that from consumers that you have? Because that's, I think, our biggest struggle is we can always find the 18 plus, but it's a big struggle to find the 13 to 17-year-olds.
Great question. So we're fully COPRA compliant, which means we can interview as young as 5 years old. And so we do some parent-accompanied interviewing with kids right down to that preschool age, which is really amazing. So we can access consumers at almost any age. And we often find that that's where the video responses can really work really well as well. So as far as a panel goes, we don't own our own panels. We do work with the marketplaces and specialist panels for those hard-to-reach audiences as well.
No, you keep it. The question's for you. Okay, Taylor, my question is, it seems like you've had really good experience with knit. How often do you use video in your storytelling at Kellanova, and does knit make it, I know knit makes it easier, but do you just tag it onto stuff?
Yeah, I think the answer is probably not enough, namely because of the heavy lifting it typically takes for creating video. But with the knit project we had, they automatically generate the videos based on the prompts that you input into it. And so we said, okay, I want a 2-minute video telling me the main point, or I want a 2-minute video on this topic, and it spits it out into a formatted slide. It was truly seamless.
Okay, that's really cool, because a lot of times we need that to dramatize the somewhat dull numbers and statistics so that people can really get and remember what it is that we're trying to say. So,
And it becomes irrefutable things you heard from the consumer, right? We played a number of videos and we shared the work in with the organization, and someone said, well, I thought I heard that being a high school jock isn't cool. Why is this a high school jock talking about working out? And we're like, well, no, it's changed context, right? It's not about being the high school jock and being cool. It's about prioritizing, balancing your health and moving your body, and that's cool, right?
and it's cool because you can also kind of quantify it and say, hey, here's the quantification, and here's somebody saying it.
Exactly. All in one fall swoop.
Cool. I think we're at time. So if you have any more questions, please come up and we'd gladly answer them. I'll be sticking around, and I've got some of my colleagues down here in the front couple of rows as well. But thank you again for coming, and looking forward to talking.